I'm Jonathan Fishman. I'm one of the founders of LeanLaw. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Steps to Package Your Services for the Legal Niche. This is part of an overriding, what is it, 7-part series, 6-part series? 6-part series, Increase Your Profitability Working with Law Firms. A few announcements. I'm going to just share my screen real quick to get things going and pull up my little presentation here. Announcements. So we kind of talked about this last time. There's the LeanLaw Accounting Pro program. I want to again reemphasize this. We've launched it. We've brought it into something called the Mighty Networks, and we revamped and redid our online learning content management system with a tool called Thinkific. And if you can say that 10 times without slobbering it, I will give you a quarter or something. I always do that wrong. So that's launched and that's happening. And there's some good engagement that's beginning there. And what I want to say is that is also a place that even if you're not totally ready to take on law clients, it's a good place for the tenets of our program, which is community, education, and collaboration. And there's an office hours with Tracy Todd, who is our QuickBooks Pro Advisor, law firm accounting specialist, and onboarding lead. She's in office hours weekly, there to answer any questions. So if there's just some, hey, how do you deal with this situation? That's a good place to get that information. So we've also introduced, and I'm not sure everyone understands this at LeanLaw, something called the monthly masterclass. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for a second. In a minute, but this is both my CTO, Fred Willerup, and our head of customer success, Chase Sullivan, leading really in-depth deep dives into not just LeanLaw functionality, but how these things work for law firms. And you can see that some of the past masterclasses have happened this year that are up in this list, and there's a link to those on YouTube, so you can go back and watch some of those if you really want to dive into expenses, deep dive in product features and new features, compensation and distribution. That's a really good one on compensation tracking in LeanLaw. So I'll post a link in a minute on that where you can find those. You can also just Google Masterclass LeanLaw and you'll see it in YouTube. So here's where we're at, September 9th. Welcome to fall, everyone. Today in Boise, Idaho, it's smoky and 97. So fall is getting a kind of a new definition here in the Southwest. We're getting all the fires from California and Oregon. Today, we're going to talk about 5 steps to package your services for the legal niche. But you can see here's the list of classes that we've done or webinars that Loren and I've done this year. Those are all on YouTube, and I'll try to find that link and share it with the group as well, so you have access to it. And then just to note, we'll have our next one October 28th, and this is sort of the bonus one, which is Loren's going to share with us some strategic planning for 2022. So we'll see that happen as well. 2 little things on LeanLaw, and then we'll get to the meat of it. This is a huge step forward for us, which is the beginnings of the next generation of our reporting interface. So I just drew the screen up, but this is something that we pride ourselves at LeanLaw, is the idea of reporting and data. It's one of the 3 things that we have 3 tenets in LeanLaw in terms of what we do or how we think, which is what we can automate, what we can integrate with, and what opportunities do we have with data. In this is a revamp of how we organize the reporting, and you can see it now. It's by niche, it's by user, it's by lens, what you're looking at it, by client, by matter, by user, etc. And then one report that we brought online was client and user productivity. I'm showing the user productivity. What's important here is that this is the report that tells you all of the people in the law firm, the hours that they've contributed, what was written down. Writing down means that on the invoice, it shows 8 hours, and the responsible attorney says, geez, I can't bill 8 hours, so I'm only going to bill 4. So we wrote it down to 4 hours, but we want to capture the 4 that was billed and the 4 that was written down. That's the write down hours. And then some values, and then the total, so you can kind of get some sense. And all of these are drillable, meaning I can go in and see what clients and matters that, Frederick Taylor here made up those 271 hours. We also revamped our AR report. We're very excited about this. This is live data from QuickBooks, and we're now showing aging. If you click through this, you'll get some underlying data about the invoices and the actual aging. So there's 2 layers to this. So when you see Coastal, that's a bad example. When you see McKernan, they have $4,400. Well, if you click into McKernan, you're going to actually see the invoices that are outstanding. So again, making that data transparent to the users of the law firm without having to go into QuickBooks or some other tool to do that. So just a little snippet on LeanLaw and what's happening. And before we get to the, I guess we'll do introductions first. So let me get out of my little report here. So Loren, as I always want to start, so we can get the audience acquainted with you and your background, could you tell us a little bit about, how you came to be a coach, how you came to be focused on accounting and those folks, and just a little bit about, your background?
Sure. Let's start with my accent. Originally from Brooklyn, grew up in Miami Beach, Florida, raised our kids in Oregon, and now we're down in Southern California because I wanted a warm winter. Didn't want to be cold in December or January any longer. I am a sports psychologist turned business coach. What I have developed over the years is a niche as well as a specialty. I work with accounting professionals, showing them how to double their income without feeling like a slave to their business, being able to free up your time much more than what you typically would without having it affect your bank account. And basically, I love the pricing part, packaging your services, because that's when you're able to earn more than if you charge an hourly rate. The other thing is from 2018 to 2021, I have been listed among the top 22 business coaches globally by HubSpot in their annual list of business coaches. So that is pretty much in a nutshell about me, Jonathan. But the accent was the most important part.
The accent was the most important part. Yeah, I mean, you confused me because you had a 504 area code, and then I listened to you on the phone, and I'm like, well, she's not from Oregon. I want to just quickly find out a little bit about the folks that are here. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. There's 3 questions, and you should see the poll now. If folks could pop in and answer that. I'm also going to, while you guys are answering the polls, I don't see anyone answering it.
I don't see the poll up yet.
There it goes. Someone did, because someone just answered it. So
perfect.
And then in the chat, here's the link. Okay, just a few more seconds on the poll. So the majority of folks, wow, we have a bunch of first timers here. So this is awesome. And I will find the link to all the previous webinars that we did, and I'll post it in the group and folks want to come backwards. And the majority of folks either don't have law clients, or they have 1 or 2. A few are really heavily niched into law, and the majority are either they're in the Accounting Pro program, but they're not engaged, or they're not yet at all. So I hope, I'm going to close the poll. I hope all of you consider the LeanLaw Accounting Pro program. You can find that online. I'll again try to find a link for that too before we go. So just to get us moving into the conversation, Loren, this is kind of a broad question, but I'll start with it, which is, what are some of the challenges accounting professionals face as they develop a legal niche? So let's just start way pulling the lens back and go from there.
Well, what I see is that accounting professionals do meaningful work for their clients. This was especially true when we first went into COVID, or the PPP loans, EIDL loans came out, and they were spending hours of their own time trying to figure it out in order to help their clients navigate and get some of those resources. But even though you do such meaningful work for your clients, a lot of times your rates don't reflect your value. As a result of that, you end up with what I call an upper limit challenge, which means that your fees are tied to time. If you have no more time to give or sacrifice, then it limits your earning potential. So that is the main thing that I see as far as a challenge, is having that upper limit challenge. You can't earn more because you have no more time to give.
Okay, and to keep the engagement going, we have a second poll. I'm going to launch that really quick, and then we won't have polls for a while, I promise. But this question's asking, just to give us some context of how folks are charging for their clients today. And we've had, gosh, you guys are getting really good at doing the polls. Thanks. See, try to get it up to at least 80% participated. Okay, so the answer, the majority of you do a combination of flat rate and hourly, but a decent percentage, a quarter of you are doing hourly, quarter flat rate, and then 21% are doing value pricing. So let's move and you work with that. So again, this is really in the spirit of your whole sort of mantra, but there's some very specific steps that you've taught in this webinar series, but I want to kind of start from this place, which is, how do these folks increase their income without the additional hours, right? That's the essence of really who you are as a professional. So what are those steps? What is the coaching you give there?
Well, basically, it is what I call my raise your rates formula. If you even just take notes and follow these 5 steps, you will absolutely be able to increase your income without having to donate additional hours of your personal time to your business. But the very first step is knowing who your high value clients are, because some clients are low value, and that could be your highest paying client too. And then other clients are high value, and be able to really understand what makes a high value client and how is a low value client different. So that's the very first thing, is how to attract those high value clients to you. The second thing is communicating your value, which is one of the most challenging things, because marketing doesn't always come easily to accounting professionals. How do you say what's important to somebody else as opposed to what you think is important? Because what you focus on and what matters most to you is going to differ from what matters most to a client of yours. Number 3, which is what we're really taking a deep dive into today, is packaging your services. This is starting to separate your time from your fees. It allows you to bundle certain services together that achieve a specific outcome. Number 4 is value pricing. That is how to be able to grow your bank account, have it be more profit than just additional revenues, by knowing what the value is from your client's perspective, instead of looking at your time and cost and then charging according to those calculations. And then number 5 is consultation mastery. This is how to engage and enroll a high value client into your services, where they're excited to work with you. They realize that they have more to gain than the fees that they're paying you. And if you don't like the sales part, this absolutely is what you want to do, is have what I call a value conversation instead of having to pitch someone. So those are the 5 steps of the raise your rates formula: high value clients, communicating your value, knowing how to package your services, value price those services, and then consultation mastery in order to enroll them with a value conversation instead of a pitch.
And I just want to say 2 things here, having done this with you for a while. The first is that Loren's system works, and I've seen this firsthand with folks in our community at LeanLaw, meaning accounting professionals that want to work with LeanLaw clients. We engage them, meaning we just engaged Loren, and Loren, through the organic process, was engaged with the accounting professional, and we've seen radical changes in these folks' accounting practices. I mean, all of the tenets that Loren speaks to about working less, charging more, having the courage to package your services correctly, having the strength and conviction to have a value-based conversation, to get out of sort of the commodity. All of that came true, and these people have really seen dramatic benefits in their practice. So I would say that when you listen to what she's saying, there is some truism to it, and we've seen it actualized. The second thing, when she talks about the communicating your value, the second point that she had, I think that's really important to understand with attorneys. Attorneys are upmarket professionals. And if you start to talk about what you do. Well, we'll do your bookkeeping and we'll do your, trust reconciliation, and we'll talk about all that in the sort of what you do conversation. You immediately become a commodity. And you're then having this conversation that's not equal with them because you're just a commodity. And they see that very quickly. Even the administration staff will see that very quickly. If you talk about value in saying that we can help you be compliant with your trust with your practice, or you talk about how I can help you grow your practice and decrease receivables and really have a value-based conversation, you immediately have a sense of equality with that attorney. And I think it's really critical if you're interacting and really want to grow your practice into whether it's a solo or up into larger law firms. Understanding your value and how that speaks to the value of a law firm is really critical, and it changes the context of the whole conversation. So continuing with this theme of we're doing a little backstory to get to our main meat of our conversation. I want to talk a little bit about pricing. So why, Loren, do you advocate and coach the idea of separating fees from time?
Well, basically, I believe that charging for your time, as you mentioned, positions you as a commodity. It undervalues your expertise and all of that insight that you bring to what you do to get that end result. The other thing is that it is unfair to your clients, and it's unfair to you also. It creates a tug of war where both of you want an opposite outcome. Your clients want you to work as fast as possible, to pay you as little as possible, where you want to be able to slow things down, take your time in order to be able to earn more for a client. And the other thing about charging for your time is that as you gain expertise, as you add technologies such as LeanLaw to what it is that you do for your clients, then you actually get faster, you're more efficient, but that means that you're earning less than when you first started out, or you didn't have that technology, which will then lower your bill because you're now charging for your time and it is overlooking your expertise.
So it's interesting because it kind of goes into the next conversation or next question, which I already kind of touched upon, which is, when the accounting professionals are hard workers, right? They work their tails off because there's a lot of legwork, and they offer this sort of myriad of services, right? They're doing all sorts of things across a law firm. So talk a little bit about a la carte services. I mean, I guess I talked a little bit, I kind of, I set you up a little bit earlier about a la carte versus commodity, I'm sorry, a la carte services, that idea. So speak to that a little bit, please.
Well, first of all, I will randomly go to accounting professionals' websites. And when I go to the services page, I see that long list of different services that they do for different businesses, for their clients. It could be sometimes 20, 30 things, and they're doing it for small business and medium-sized business and not-for-profits. And they talk about their affordable competitive rates. And as a result of that, it positions you as a technician. When you do that, you are focusing on the tasks and the functions, which makes you a commodity as opposed to your expertise and knowing how to use those things. The value is on really what you know and that you know how to use those things instead of what you do. When you focus on that skill set, once again, you're perceived, as Jonathan said, as a cost. This means that you are going to remain competitive with your pricing, as well as competing for new clients, because a potential client and attorney can't differentiate why they ought to work with you compared to somebody else who offers similar services. So once again, just focusing on a la carte services, listing everything you do under the sun on your website positions you as a technician, and it actually undervalues your expertise and all the years and the difference that you make for your clients. And as a result of that, it affects your bank account.
Yeah, and I think everyone needs to recognize that the same conversation of value-based pricing and becoming more of a maybe not so much in the accounting world, but maybe so the subscriptive model is happening in law too. And for all the same reasons. They want to have deeper and more meaningful interactions and relationships with their clients. They want to stabilize their pricing. They also want to, earn more and work less, all those same theories. And so know that that's a trend. I just read something in an LA publication from the Bar Association there that talked about, I can't remember the exact number, but it was a significant increase in the idea of value-based pricing on the law side. So there's a receptivity on the law side to hearing this because it's the same thing that's happening in their industry, and for all the same reasons. And so there should be an explicit, there should be an easy conversation if you package and present yourself well, because they're hearing all of the same pressures that you're feeling in your industries about evolving and becoming, having these more extensive relationships. So Loren, what's the, I want to kind of, there's like a sub question here, because you talked about it from the accounting perspective. I want to talk a little bit about from the law firm side. And Laura and I had a precursor conversation, and I sort of added this question. So I'm going to ask it to you, Lauren, but I might augment it a little bit as needed. But the mindset of the law firm in terms of their needs, like what do they need?
Well, I think first of all, you have to understand what it is that they need. And this means that you want to focus on solutions and benefits that are of value to them, as opposed to those tasks that you do. From a conversation that we had, Jonathan, what we really agreed on was it's coming from the perspective of the firm and stepping into their shoes. They care about the finances within their firm, about financial productivity with the associates or each of the partners in their firm, compliance. Those were some of the things as far as the perspective of the firm. And then the other part that we looked at is their own practice. It's looking at the client's financials, the team's productivity. How does that affect their personal revenue? Are they maxing out on billable hours, or is it that someone's not quite carrying their weight and needs to have more training or insights as to how to be able to really get up to expectations and speed to be able to hit their numbers? And that goes into the staff productivity relative to performance and cost. So I know that you know more about this part from the attorney side of it. Anything that you want to add to it?
Let me frame it slightly differently.
Please.
So in LeanLaw, we have two buying personas, and these are the same people who will be buying legal services. We have one called the managing partner persona. And again, maybe this is for a slightly larger firm that has a managing partner, maybe it's an attorney, but there's some attorney. And when she's looking at her firm, she's looking at through the lens of the firm's finances. She's looking for reporting and understanding essentially the overall macro reports of the law firm. She's also looking at the individual attorneys and their essentially productivity and financial performance. And then there's another level of compliance. What they typically don't care about is the weeds of bookkeeping and workflows and things like that, but they do want to know that what decisions they make are going to create some efficiencies and modernization. The second sort of buying persona, I call it, is we call it the firm manager. It could be the office manager, it could be the COO, it could be the head of finance. There's different titles, but she tends to be someone who's really in the workflows, and really you have to have a more sort of, nuts and bolts conversation about that. And what she's really interested in is, how are these workflows going to be? How does she get the data out so she can create the reports? How does she actually do the work? Now, an attorney, so who's not a managing partner, not the firm manager, he might look at his own practice, right? So instead of looking at the firm with a managing partner who's also attorney typically, they're looking at their own practice. So they want to understand essentially the finances of their clients. What's the WIP is, work in progress, what's yet to be billed, what was billed, what's been collected, any outstanding receivables. They might want to know the productivity of the staff relative to their clients. So when you're engaging law firms, you really want to understand the buyer personas, which is the managing partner, the firm operator, and then some other peripheral staff. It could be an attorney, it could be other people. And then you also want to understand what they need. That managing partner needs to look at the firm as a whole. The operator is really the workflows and how the financial sort of life cycle of a client gets facilitated through it. And then there's some other powers to be that have other requirements about their individual practices. And remember, when you're talking to that managing partner, there are two conversations: the firm management and their own individual practice. And you need to differentiate those two and ask questions around those two especially if there's moving parts in that. So, and by the way, I didn't mention this earlier. If anyone has a question or wants to add a comment, please do so in the chat, because we'll bring you right into the conversation with that. So if something we're saying doesn't make sense, or you have a question or a follow-up, just chat us to the group and we'll bring it into the conversation. So getting kind of back into the accounting mindset, you know, when these folks are working for law firms, they do work. It just happens that you know, I hear this, like I can hear Linda Artestani in my head saying, I already did this and now I'm doing this for free and I don't really want to do it, right? I hear her in my head. It just happened with a client. I had this very frustrating client on our side, small and demanding, and I had a relationship with Linda, and Linda brought this client into LeanLaw, and we're both fetching on Slack about this guy and doing more work. So how do we correct that? How do you start to correct the process where you don't fall into the trap where you're doing work out of the scope or out of, you know, out of the doing work for free?
I think the first thing that I want to mention is that there's some things that end up causing you to do work for free. Maybe the scope changes, as you talked about, the firm grows, they add more associates or partners to the firm. It could be also that there's new staff on the back end, and they expect you to train that staff. So that's some of the things that happen. When these things happen, then that means that your fees don't keep up with the charges. It could also be that your legacy clients haven't had a rate increase since they first started working with you. So those are some of the things to consider. And that's where the packages really start to correct this, where you no longer give away work for free, or there's things that you don't know how to charge for. You can actually roll into your packages, and then you're getting paid for some of those things that you would never put on an invoice. So I would say that become aware of what are the services that you don't know how to charge for, or you do for free, where you have clients maybe haven't raised their rates for a long, long time, even though they've grown, your rates haven't gone up accordingly. And then look at how we can bundle things into packages, and that will actually start to compensate you even when the scope changes. The other thing that goes into packages from my point of view, and when I teach my clients, is that packages aren't like you roll them into it once and then it stays at that same package or that same rate forever and ever and ever. This is something that you regularly review, and you can go ahead and change it as necessary. You can change it on a 6-month basis if it's a fast growing firm, or you can change it on a year with the majority of clients. And that way you're no longer stuck with one rate that you haven't gone back and raised for maybe 3, 4, 7 years.
Yeah, and I think it's important too that packages and fixed fee pricing doesn't divorce you from tracking time. And I say this a lot to law firms, and I'll say it to accounting professionals because I see it. The only way to really understand how much effort, especially if you have staff working for you, is that if you have some aspect of what time is the commodity that is going into the work. And so I know a lot of you don't want to track time, and I'm not suggesting that during the day you should do what lawyers do and track it down to, you know, 1/10 of an hour in 6-minute increments. But what we at LeanLaw do from our onboarding is I just ask my team at the end of the day to take a 5-minute exercise and give a swag of what time they did. And we use LeanLaw, right? Because it's client project, and we have many folks in the accounting community, client projects. We're not saying, hey, derive your day and every minute track every minute. All we're saying is, hey, give us some swags as to what you did during the day, how much time you put forth into these clients. And the reason we do that is because then when we look back, it's not 100% right, but it's also, you know, maybe it's 80% right. And it gives them some sense of what the cost went into it, so that we can, to Loren's exact point, go back and look at the pricing, because we do onboarding, and that's the one thing we do at a fixed rate. And we don't, it can easily be a black box in terms of what the cost is associated with that. Loren, it looks like you're answering some questions in the chat. Anything that you want to bring out to the group before we jump ahead?
I was asking what you believe your clients most care about, the attorneys that you work for. Nina was saying that basically the lawyers that their firm services is cares mostly about their clients, which I think is great that there are attorneys. It's proof that there are attorneys that care about quality over quantity and really the client experience.
Yeah, I think most attorneys aspire to that, and I think most attorneys do. I mean, we at LeanLaw are really trying to modernize the next phase of what we want to do is really think about the invoice and how they can communicate that. Law firms can communicate value. I think.
And then the other thing I put in the chat also, Jonathan, was just what are some of the things you do for free because you don't know how to charge for it?
Oh yeah, if you got something there, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, would love to hear what other people are going to share.
Yeah, so
We're on number 7.
Well, I was going to say, I was actually going to ask you a question that's not on the list that we created, but I'm kind of curious. Why is it so important to understand your value before you do packages? Because we set this conversation up a little bit by saying, you know, we use some precursors, and value was something you and I both, you know, spoke to and think is really important. But why is it so important? What's the correlation between successful packages and understanding and being able to communicate your value? I know I'm asking you off the hip, and you can say, hey, we're going to cover it later, so feel free to punt on this one.
No.
It came up to me what I was thinking.
If it's coming up for you, it's probably coming up for somebody else.
I think the correlation is important.
I believe the main thing is that you first have to connect with your own value before you can expect anybody else to recognize the value that you offer. The other thing to realize is that so often the rates that you're charging, especially if it's an hourly rate, is often a reflection of your self-worth and what you think you are worth. If you don't really value your services or you see yourself as being competitive and average, then you're going to have lower rates. If you recognize what it is that you do for your clients and how they benefit from it, then that will affect your rates as well, because let's just face it, value is subjective, and that so often we hold ourselves back from wanting to charge too much, being seen as greedy, gouging a client. And I will let you know, it is impossible to do that. We're not going to get into why or how. I just want to put that thought out there. So packages are the ways to start to separate your fees and time, because basically your clients don't really want to buy your time. Actually, if you look at Amazon with Prime and FedEx with overnight delivery, people actually value speed and having something done faster than having it be a long, drawn out process. So that's part of why I believe packages solve things. The more that you package your services and bundle things together, it increases your profit margin without having to do any additional work.
Yeah, I also think it facilitates a far richer conversation with a law firm. You know, because you put structure, because this is one thing I want everyone to hear really loud and clear. Law firms are terrible at buying professional services and software. Terrible. And they're in particular terrible at buying software. So in many instances, the more structure you can help them to understand what they're buying, helps facilitate a much better onboard and better alignment with you know, us as a software vendor and the client. We have to do a ton of work to, we don't sell, we help people buy. And what we try to do is fail fast, in the sense that coaching people to help them, you know, even point them, like, I'll ask questions of law firms that they should be asking me as a software vendor, because I know they're not asking the question, or I'll bring the topic up because I need to flush it. Because if I don't flush it, it could be a problem, you know, 2 months down the line. Question. So did you answer that, Loren? Because Loren, you answered. The question was advice on a long impromptu phone call, which I think is going to get to my next question, which is, you know, what are some of the things accounting professionals do for legal firms, but overlook charging for them? And so who asked it? Michelle asked advice on long impromptu phone calls.
Which, she just answered. But basically, I have a list of 7, and I'm going to give you the top 3 things that you probably do for law firms or other clients and you don't know how to charge for. The first one I have is response. how quickly you respond to emails, texts, or phone calls. I had someone tell me earlier is that they respond and are available 24/7, 365 days a week, which is not a good thing. That leads to burnout. You have no boundaries. They text you on Friday night at 8 p.m. They expect a text back within 15 minutes, even though you might be on a date or doing something else. So you really want to define some boundaries and some expectations regarding communication. The other thing is resources that you might not know how to charge for. This could include training law firm staff on how to be able to accurately use LeanLaw or QuickBooks. It could be client consultations. As Michelle said, those quick impromptu calls. Those are things that you can actually put into your packages also, so you're no longer giving those away for free. And then the third thing that I put is what I call reconciling. Every now and then, client will have specific needs. As you saw with the PPP and the EIDL loans, they needed their docs done and up to date quickly in order to be able to grab some money to keep their business going. Maybe another thing that you don't charge additional for is on-site work. They want you to come in a certain amount of times a month or whatever that is, and you are stopping everything in your business. You're getting dressed up, you're driving, you're going to their work site. You know you don't work as efficiently when you're working in their offices as when you're working in their own, but you're not really getting paid for the full value of working on site. And something else might be that you're in the cloud with your business, but they're still on desktop, which makes things a little bit more clunkier. Things like LeanLaw probably doesn't integrate well with desktop. And it means that you're not going to be efficient because now you're trying to adapt to their processes instead of having them adapt to yours.
Yeah,
so those are some of the things that you probably do and don't know how to charge for.
And I've seen, just a little to augment it from my experience in interacting with our accounting community, is one of the things that's really critical in onboarding is setting the norms for communication, how you're going to communicate, where you're going to communicate, what kind of information can be communicated. Lisio is a tool that I'm just thinking of two folks in my head use religiously with clients, and it frustrates the law firm a little bit in the beginning, because they're like, why do we have to go through the secure platform? Why do we have to do all this? And you know, that's all part of setting the expectation up front, what the norms of communication are and when that can happen. And I think we have to do this with our clients as well, because we set early on very personal relationships with LeanLaw, and then we have to shift them into the more, you know, regimented support. And there's a very explicit transition. And I still, like today, I had an email from an old client and they're asking me very remedial questions, and I have to sort of nudge them back into the norms. Because I can't, your inclination is to answer the question, but you really need to teach them how to go get help themselves through our support system. Okay, we're gonna do a poll. I'm gonna stop. Here's the poll. Do you offer packages? Yes, no. So I'm gonna ask an I'm gonna ask a follow-up to this that I don't have in a poll. But I'd be curious for folks online to tell me. So 64% of you said, yes, we offer packages. So of that 64% of folks that did that, what percentage of your overall business is packages? Meaning, if you look at the total revenue that you had, I'm just curious, is it 100%? Is it 10%? Has that kind of thing? Okay, so Loren, so now we're going to really, we talked a lot about the backstory of how to get here, right? We talked about value, we talked about some do's and don'ts, but let's get into more packages. Like, okay, so how do we, what are the considerations that these folks need to think about, you know, when you are coaching people in developing the packages? Meaning, what are those, you know, what are you coaching as these packages are being developed for their clients?
Mm-hmm. The first thing is I love to do a process called reverse engineering, because it kind of breaks up how we approach something. I want you to start with the end in mind, which is what reverse engineering is. By doing it from what that end result is, the outcome or the benefits that your clients achieve, you're going to come up with some different things than if you did it from where you are now to where you want to be. It's similar to taking a detour when going to the highway that you've never taken before. You're more aware, you're looking at things around you, as opposed to just kind of being more in autopilot. So when you're starting with the end in mind, some of the things you want to consider as you're developing your questions is, who is it for? Is there a variety of different types of law firms that you work with? Maybe the solo practitioner, a law firm that has a couple partners, and then one that is a mega law firm with a lot of associates and possibly even multiple offices. So those are some things to think about. I offer 3 packages. One package, the VIP, is for people who really want to get their rates up to speed and increase their income, free up their time as quickly as possible. The main package I offer is Gold, and those are for accounting professionals that really want to continue to start to increase their rates, get packages done, free up their time too. But if they work too intensively, they would get overwhelmed and not get the best results. And then my third package, which is called the Accelerate, is for people that have maybe already packaged the services, have done value pricing, and their clients are up to their current rates, but they want to maintain their momentum and have accountability. So those are an example of how I have 3 packages for the accounting professionals that I work with. So who is it for and who fits into each package is the first thing to think about. The second thing is, what is the results that someone will get from each of the packages that you offer? It could be with that basic package, they mainly want compliance, compliance with their trust accounting and compliance with being able to file their taxes on time. The second package that you offer might be for growth-minded law firms, and those are ones that want to have the financials accurate so that they can really make certain business decisions based upon their financials. And then the third one might be for enterprise. That could be for those mega law firms that have a lot of different moving parts, and they want to be as profitable as possible and want to really see you as a consultant and having access for questions as they come up, as opposed to being more limited with your information and how to apply the financials that you give them. And then the third thing you want to think about is, how does your client benefit from moving into one of those packages? Think about what they have been tolerating and they can't do because maybe they don't have accurate insights or certain types of numbers from specific reports. And once they get that from you, what's possible for them that they can move forward with because they're no longer dealing with that problem. So that is actually a real key thing to think about. But the main things is knowing who it's for, looking at the specific problem that each package solves, and what's possible for your client once they have that challenge solved and they can go ahead and move forward.
So I just want to add one note. When you think about like what should be in the packages, right, for law firms, what are some of the things you should consider? And these are just my personal, I wanted to give a few ideas of my personal experience, because just so you know, I started LeanLaw in 2015 with my 2 partners, and all I do is talk to law firms every day, all day long. So I have a good sense of what problems and pain points they have in their overall accounting. So I would break it up into 5 or 6 groups that you think about in terms of packaging. The obvious one is bookkeeping services, monthly reconciliation, etc. And then the derivative of that is the generic or the standard, reports like income statement, profit or loss, statement of cash flows, etc. A second thing to think about is outsourced invoicing. So the idea of outsourcing all of the invoicing workflow. So someone would come into LeanLaw and actually take all of the unbilled time, prepare draft invoices, allow the attorneys to review them. Then you would take ownership of delivering them to clients and doing the collections on it. This third thing is trust reconciliation, which is really valuable, and you should charge a premium for it. But that's the 3-way reconciliation that you do on a monthly basis to ensure that they're compliant. Huge value. So and there's some norms you can set in best practices and how they receive trust money and use trust money. But the reconciliation is the third thing that you can add to your packages. The fourth is reporting. And reporting are law firm specific reportings, and it's really around attorney compensation, staff productivity, and profitability. So looking at the attorney and their specific profitability in the firm, looking at the overall compensation per attorney, and then looking at the productivity of the staff. And there's other ways of slicing and dicing that, but that's the sort of thing that QuickBooks can't do and a tool like LeanLaw does, in terms of how you package that information. So again, those are the 4 or 5 things that I would think about in terms of how I might package that for attorneys. Okay, Loren, sorry, I just wanted to throw that out just to give them a little color as to how they might structure those packages. So rather than just simply, selling their time, right? So we keep going back to this packages versus selling their time. And we, we've established the clients really don't want to buy time, right? They really want to think about investing in a solution, right? So that's really what they're getting at. Like, instead of being some transaction, they really want a solution long-term. And it goes into some of those packages I just spoke to. What are the steps to packaging their services for a legal firm? Like, what do they have to do? I gave them sort of the end of the story, but like, what processes do they have to go through so they can get there?
Well, first, I think you want to, once again, think about what is the problem that your packages solve. And even if they still are using billable hours, they will invest in your accounting services and invest in a package as opposed to demanding that you charge them an hourly rate. So I just want to put that out there too. But the very first step is decide on an ideal client, your high value client. Is it maybe that you are focusing on a niche, which is a particular focus within the legal system? Maybe you are working only with immigration attorneys or someone who practices personal injury or family law. So think about, do you actually serve a niche within the legal profession? Because not all of them are the same in what their focus is, or even the personality mix. The other thing is looking at whether you solve a specific problem for your client, which will be specialty. So there's a difference between being having a niche and being a specialist. It could be that your specialty could be maximizing profits for really growth-minded firms. It could be also that some of them are out of compliance with their bar association and you help them get back into compliance with their trust accounting. So that's something to think about as far as specialty. And that is the first thing, is who is a high value client for you. After that, you want to go to defining what it is that your client wants. Think about their wants, their needs, and their desires. Their wants are the basic minimums, and that would be possibly a silver package that you have. Their needs are the minimums. That would be a silver package. Their wants are things that they know they ought to have in place, but don't have in place yet. And those would be probably the majority of clients who would fit into what I call a gold package. And then there are the desires, the things that are future focused, that really represent success for that particular principal in the law firm. And that might be for people that want that premium or diamond package. So that's another way to think about it, is understanding the needs, the wants, and the desires of your clients. If you can connect your services to their desires, no matter what size they are, that is going to be a value to them. And they're going to really see the benefit of working with you instead of somebody else. Now, if you're not sure what that is, then go ahead and talk to maybe 2 or 3 of your best clients and ask them about those things. The third step you want to look at is just get out an Excel spreadsheet or your yellow legal pad and list all the services that you do for your clients. That includes the things that you don't know how to charge for, the things that you do for free, the things that become out of scope, and you never make any adjustments on the pricing with your clients. So go ahead and just list all of that. Maybe it's some of those things I said before you do for free, which is training, how quickly you respond to phone calls and inquiries, the additional resources or reports that get requested. And then step number 4 is looking at the end result, determining the end result. As I mentioned before, that's about reverse engineering. Think about the problem that your package solves for your client. And this allows you to start to actually categorize the different services you do and put them into bundles. The bundles for just the compliance piece, the bundles for the growing law firms that you might be working with, the bundles then for the enterprise type of law firms, and they are usually stackable or tiered. And then the last thing is I've been talking about is the design. You want to design your packages. And once again, the diamond is for those clients that really want access to you. They want the premium service. They're willing to pay that price for it. They want a done for you all access package. And then the gold is where the majority of your clients fit. That gives them their financials. It gives them insights. It keeps their trust accounts compliant. And maybe it's going to give them some additional things so that they're making great decisions regarding their growth and their business strategy. And then the silver, once again, is the bare essentials. This could be for the attorneys that are solo practitioners. Maybe they're startups. They don't have a lot of cash coming in the door yet, but it lets them keep everything organized, up to date, and they don't have any more bags of receipts. They don't have any more accounting shame. So those are some of the things to think about as you are creating packages. I'm going to just do them real quickly again, Jonathan.
Well, I have a question, and then we'll,
Yeah,
and then
please.
because I'm going to ask you to, I was going to ask you to go through them again, but I have a question. When someone onboards a silver package, do you kind of compose it in such a way that you hope they upgrade to a gold or a diamond? Meaning, is it like the software model where you're basically, you have some, hesitancy? So you start in the silver and we can start a relationship and we just know over time that we're going to upgrade to gold and diamond?
I think it's recognizing that different clients have different needs and that the silver will go ahead and accommodate the needs of certain clients. They'll be able to get started with you. But I also believe that you ought to share with them all of your different packages when you're discussing the ways to work best together for a couple of different reasons. But one of them is that even if they start with the silver, maybe they're going to want to aspire one day to the gold or the diamond. And that lets them know that you offer so much more than just what's in that silver package, and that you can grow along with them.
And one other kind of follow up to that, do you find that sometimes a silver client offering this sort of basic package attracts maybe a less than ideal client?
Well, only if you're going to charge it according to time and cost as opposed to value pricing it. If you're going to value price your services and you go through the system that I set up to pre-qualify clients to make sure that you're primarily working with high value clients, the cheap clients never sign on with you. They move on to somebody else that has lower rates.
Yeah. We're going to review this in a second. We have a few more minutes, so we're good with time. But I wanted to make one little comment because you talked about the diversity of law clients, and I wanted everyone to understand that what I meant in terms of different law firms have different practices. As you get into larger law firms, you'll see a mix of different types of law practices within there, and you kind of have to have the general diversity or dexterity to understand it. But just as an extreme example, you might have a personal injury attorney that treats their trust account specifically in settlements, meaning they do a lot of work, collect some expenses, and then receive a chunk of money and have to disperse it. And that's a one-time transaction. We receive money, we disperse it, and it's all done within a 24 to 48 hour period typically. Whereas you might have a real estate attorney that uses a trust account both as a retainer account, meaning against hours, but also as an escrow function, holding money on behalf of two parties transacting. So it's just an example how two different disciplines use a trust account in an entirely different way. And so getting in, and if you're really good at contingent trust accounting and understand contingent practices, well, you should really broadcast that on your website. Because if that's your ideal client, a contingent firm looking for it and saying, I know everything about settlement and QuickBooks as an example, well, that's going to be super attractive to a law firm versus coming into a law firm and someone saying, what's your practice contingent? Oh, I don't know anything about that, because it's a very unique thing. Okay, Loren, let's go back in and review what you just went through, the essentially the how to get started on your packaging. You had 5 steps.
Sure. So basically what you want to do for those 5 steps is decide on your high value client, know who that is, define what your client wants. Go ahead. Step number 3 is developing a list of all your services. Number 4 is determining the end result. And number 5 is designing your packages. Okay.
So pricing, I guess we're talking a little bit on the chat about pricing. So pricing is tricky and hard, Loren. How do you recommend people initially price their packages?
Well, I actually teach what I call good, better, and best pricing, when you're first starting out. It's similar to learning how to ride a two-wheel bicycle, but you start with the training wheels on the side to help you get used to it and gain your balance. The resource that I have in the chat has all the steps listed out, but give me a moment to quickly go through it. With good, better, and best, what you want to do is someone's going to come to you. You're going to review what their needs are. Go ahead and come up with that fixed price for it. And your new good rates will be multiplying that fixed price by 1.5. That will be your new good rate. Enroll 3 people at your new good rate because you're getting used to it. It shows that people aren't as price sensitive. Then we go on to your better rate. After you've enrolled 3 people in your good rate, you're going to have people come to you, come up with that fixed price you would originally charge. Now multiply it by 2x. You're now earning double what you would have been earning before. You're getting more comfortable with that value conversation. And after you enroll 3 people at your new better rate, then go to your best rate, which takes courage, not confidence. The confidence comes later. But now people are coming to you. Once again, you come up with your flat rate and you multiply it by 3x. You are now earning 3 times more, no additional time spent working.
Totally.
And as you do that, you get more comfortable. You're working with a high level of client, and it's growing your bank account. Plus, you're getting back some of your free time and your life. You're not so burned out. But if you want all the steps to start packaging and pricing your services, go to businesssuccesssolution.com/package, and it's going to just lay out all those steps for you, including the math.
Okay, so 2 things left. I have a lot on pricing because we've learned that at LeanLaw, but 2 things left to do, Loren. I'm going to do 2 things at once because we're going to run out of time. The first is, not only did you just give them that link to packages, but you always are so generous with your time. So you've covered a lot, not just in this session, but in the 4 or 5 previous sessions that we did. So, what should folks do next if they want to learn more from you? And the second thing, before you answer that, because you're going to answer that, I'm going to put a poll up. I just have 2 follow-up questions at the end, if you folks could take the time to answer them. So go ahead, Loren, answer your question.
Yeah, if you really resonated with what we talked about today, you want to be able to get this implemented in your accounting practice, then I put aside 4 strategy sessions to have a dedicated conversation on how to raise your rates with new clients, packaging your services, but also how to go back to your old legacy clients and get them up to your new rates so that you're no longer sacrificing your personal time in order to be able to bring in a certain amount of revenues. If you want to do that, it is called a Path to Profit Strategy session. It has a $500 value, but this is really something that I do free because I love being able to talk with accounting professionals and help you with your business needs. And basically, it's at businesssuccesssolution.com/let's talk. It is, like I said, a dedicated conversation focusing on your business and your pricing.
And I will say, I'll end this by saying, reinforcing that I really vouch for Loren's engagement with other accounting professionals and the success it's been. It's really transformed. I'm thinking of one person in particular who engaged Loren, and it's really transformed her practice, and it's with such a high value. So again, this was the 5th of our series this year, 5 steps to package your services. Our next session will be October 28th. Your strategic plan for 2022 to make it the best year ever. And gosh, 21 is a better year than 20, and I for sure am optimistic that 22 is going to be a better year than 21. Loren, I thank you for this collaboration, this conversation, and this partnership. It's always a pleasure to have the time to talk with you. I thank all of you who attended and are part of our community. I encourage you to engage the LeanLaw Accounting Pro program for community, for collaboration and education. And I hope to see you all again on the 28th. So Loren, I wish you a good, healthy, happy New Year. And I look forward to talking to you later in October.
Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you taking time away from working in your business and joining us to work on your business.